There's something I've come to truly understand after years of sitting across from women from all walks of life, from royalty in grand palaces to single mothers working day and night just to get by. There's a common thread. Too many of us have forgotten how to truly honor our worth. We were raised to be kind, to be agreeable, to avoid taking up too much space. And somehow along the way, we started believing that our value depended on how others saw us instead of how we saw ourselves. But let me remind you of something important. Your worth is not up for debate. It's not something someone else gets to decide or approve. You are not waiting for anyone to walk into your life and say you're good enough. You already are, just as you are right now in this moment. Whole, worthy, and enough. A high-value woman doesn't go searching for validation. She knows her value doesn't come from how many people want her. It comes from how well she knows herself. And truly knowing yourself takes strength. It takes real courage to sit in silence with your thoughts, to ask questions that aren't easy. Who am I when I take away the roles I play? Who am I without the job, the relationship, the praise? Who am I when it's quiet and nobody is looking? That's where your true worth lies, not in what you give to everyone else, not in your relationship status, not in how much attention you get online. Your value is rooted in your presence, in your character, in the love and care you show yourself. We have to stop apologizing for our power. Stop feeling guilty for being ambitious. Stop making ourselves smaller so others feel bigger. A high-value woman doesn't lower her voice just to be accepted. She lifts her standards instead. She doesn't chase love. She becomes love. She doesn't plead for attention. She lives in a way that commands respect. And to be clear, this isn't about being arrogant or cold. It's about being steady, grounded in who you are, and secure in your self-respect. So many of us have spent years shaping ourselves into what others expected. We forgot to ask what we actually wanted. So, ask yourself honestly, what do I truly desire? Not what sounds good. Not what pleases others. What does my soul long for? When you start honoring those inner desires, you begin to return to yourself. That's when you stop simply being in a room and start owning the space you walk into. You begin to move differently, with confidence, with clarity. I know some of you may be thinking, but I've made mistakes. I stayed too long. I allowed too much. And to that, I say, welcome to the human experience. Your worth doesn't come from being perfect. It comes from your resilience. From your ability to say, I've learned, I've grown, I now know better. A high-value woman doesn't stay trapped in shame. She doesn't carry the weight of regret forever. She uses her past as a lesson, not a life sentence. She builds from what she's been through instead of breaking under it. When you finally begin to understand your worth, your entire life shifts. Every choice you make, how you speak, how you love, how you allow others to treat you, becomes a reflection of that self-worth. And the world responds differently. You start attracting better because you believe you deserve better. You teach others how to treat you by the way you treat yourself. So stop waiting for someone to come and crown you. The crown has always been yours. Dust it off. Wear it with pride. Walk like you belong, because you do. We spend so much of our lives trying to be noticed, trying to be heard. And yes, that matters. But the real power is not just in being seen, it's in allowing yourself to truly feel. Not just the happy moments, not only the wins, but all of it. That's what emotional intelligence really is. It's being able to sit with all of your feelings, the good, the hard, the confusing, without running from them, without pretending they're not there. Just being present with what's real. A high-value woman understands that real strength isn't about hiding how she feels. It's about knowing herself enough to sit with those feelings. She knows emotions are not her enemies. They're messages. Signals from within, showing her what matters, what still needs healing, and where growth is waiting. We've been told that emotions make us weak, especially as women. But that's not true. There's nothing weak about feeling deeply. The true strength is in how we respond, not how we react. Anyone can lash out. Anyone can shut down. But it takes wisdom to pause. It takes maturity to sit with discomfort and ask, what is this feeling trying to tell me? What do I need right now? That's where your emotional power lies. Not in controlling everything, but in understanding yourself. Emotional intelligence isn't just about managing yourself. It changes how you relate to others. When you know yourself emotionally, you show up differently everywhere. In your relationships, at your job, with your family. You no longer throw emotions around like weapons, and you don't hide them in shame either. You use them as tools to listen, to connect, to lead with empathy and strength. And we need more women who lead from that place. From compassion, from presence, from emotional depth, because a high-value woman doesn't walk into a room demanding attention. She earns respect by the way she shows up. She holds space for others. She listens with intention. She doesn't take everything personally because she's already anchored in who she is. But don't get confused. Being emotionally intelligent doesn't mean being a pushover. It doesn't mean letting people walk all over you just because you understand their pain. It means you can see someone struggle and still hold your boundaries. You can show kindness and still protect your peace. You can love deeply and still walk away when love becomes unhealthy. And when you reach that place, when you can stand in the middle of chaos, breathe, and respond with calm, that's when you've stepped into your true power. That's what separates a high-value woman. It's not just her looks, it's not just her success, it's her calm strength, her ability to remain true to herself even when life tests her. So, if you want to rise, don't just learn to speak powerfully. Learn to feel clearly. Learn to understand what's happening inside you. Learn to sit in discomfort long enough to hear what it's trying to teach you. That's where your wisdom is. That's where your softness and your strength can live together. Not in conflict, but in balance. Because when you master your emotions, you're not just getting by. You're leading, you're healing, you're rising. And that changes everything. There comes a time in every woman's life when she understands that loving others doesn't have to mean losing herself. And that moment marks the beginning of her journey into becoming a woman of high worth. It begins when she stops saying yes out of obligation, when she no longer feels the need to explain her no in detail, when she sees that having boundaries isn't about shutting people out. It's about creating safe paths that only the right people are allowed to walk through. Many of us were taught that kindness means being constantly available, that love means always agreeing, even when it hurts. But that's not kindness. That's habit. That's fear pretending to be loyalty. And over time, it will leave you feeling empty. You can't pour from a dry well, and you were never meant to be everyone's endless source. A woman who values herself knows she isn't for everyone, and that's perfectly fine. She recognizes that guarding her peace, her time, and her energy isn't selfish, it's sacred. She doesn't say sorry for needing quiet, doesn't feel bad for resting or for saying, "This doesn't sit right with me." She understands that boundaries don't mean pushing people away. They're signs of self-worth. And here's the truth: people will challenge you. They'll test the boundaries you put in place, especially those who once benefited from your lack of limits. But that's not your burden to carry. It's not your job to help others adjust to your growth. Your responsibility is to stand in your truth. Even if your voice trembles, even if you feel unsure, even if it's your first time. Because the moment you draw a line, you show others how you expect to be treated. You teach them through what you allow, what you endure, and what you choose to walk away from. And every time you put your well, being before someone else's demands, you rise. Now, I'm not saying it's simple, especially for those of us who've built our identity around being dependable, around being needed. But ask yourself this: what do you owe yourself? What kind of life do you want to create? Because the freedom, the clarity, the strength that comes from honoring your boundaries is unlike anything else. When you begin to say no to what exhausts you, you open space for what renews you. You attract connections based on mutual respect instead of hidden frustration. Let's be real, boundaries don't mean you stop caring. In fact, they mean you care deeply about yourself and others. They allow for relationships built on honesty, not imbalance. They keep one person from always giving and the other from constantly taking. Boundaries bring balance, and balance brings peace. So if you're still scared to speak your truth, if you're still afraid that someone will walk away the moment you say, "This isn't right for me," I want you to hear this. Anyone who leaves because you chose to honor yourself was never truly choosing you to begin with. And their departure, it's not a loss, it's a clearing. A clearing for what is genuine, for what matches your worth, for what feels right. A woman of high worth doesn't beg to be understood. She doesn't plead to be valued. She simply organizes her life in a way that anything out of alignment naturally fades away. That quiet confidence, that steady and calm strength, that's what draws people in. Don't be afraid to set your limits, because when you do, you'll find that everything good meets you on the other side of self-respect. One of the most powerful decisions a woman can make is to invest in who she's becoming, not just how she appears, not just what's popular, but in who she truly is deep down. Don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with loving how you look. There's beauty in self-care, in feeling confident in your body. But a woman of true value knows her real shine doesn't come from reflection in the mirror. It comes from her mind, from how she thinks, grows, and shows up for herself daily. There's a kind of beauty that no filter can create. The kind that enters a room and speaks through presence alone. That kind of beauty is formed through wisdom, through curiosity, through self-discipline. That kind of beauty doesn't fade, it transforms. We live in a world that often values how women look over how deeply they think. But you weren't placed on this earth to just decorate the space. You were put here to build, to lead, to evolve into someone who can't be shaken. Because she did the inner work. A high-value woman never stops learning. She reads. She reflects. She questions old habits. She pays attention, not just to her surroundings, but to her soul. She's not here to impress the world. She's here to impress herself. And when you start living from that place, when your choices reflect your spirit, you stop needing outside approval to feel complete. And remember, education doesn't always mean college degrees. Growth doesn't only happen in classrooms. Sometimes it's in the books you stay up late reading, in the therapy sessions, in the journal pages, in the honest conversations you finally have. It's found in the way you respond when life hurts, in how you rebuild your inner world, not just your outer one. The world will try to convince you that your worth depends on your youth, your beauty, or your relationship status. But your real power, it lives in your ability to grow, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. That's what makes a woman unforgettable. And when you start building that kind of inner strength, you move through life differently. You stop wasting time on things that drain you. You stop giving space to people who only see your surface. You start expecting depth because you've cultivated it within. That's when your life begins to rise, not by chance, but because you lifted your awareness. Instead of hoping someone else chooses you, you choose yourself. You become so full of insight, so full of clarity, that your presence feels like sitting beside purpose. That's the kind of woman no one forgets. The kind who changes rooms, changes hearts, changes the future, because she first changed herself. Here's the truth: your outer image can only take you so far. Your inner self, that's where your true legacy lies. There's something sacred about the woman who focuses on her own healing before trying to build a life around her. A high-value woman knows that before she can give or create or lead, she must first make peace with herself. And healing, it's not always clean. It's not always soft. Sometimes it means crying quietly in the dark. Sometimes it's facing realities you've ignored for years. But healing is the root of everything. Without it, you'll keep calling chaos normal. You'll keep thinking pain is love. You'll keep meeting the same situations with different names, but the same wounds. We live in a world that rewards productivity. Start the business, find the partner, build the brand. But hardly anyone says, pause. Are you building from wholeness or from fear? Because if you're still carrying pain from years ago, if you're still trying to prove your worth to someone who hurt you, then even your success will feel hollow. Even love will feel like a performance. A woman of worth doesn't avoid her pain. She faces it. She lets it speak. She doesn't cover it up or pretend she's fine. She says, "What is this here to teach me?" Because she knows that unhealed hurt will show up in her words, her choices, her relationships. And she refuses to let her past control her future. That kind of honesty takes courage. It asks you to admit where you left yourself behind just to feel safe. It asks you to forgive, not for them, but for your own peace, so you can move on without bitterness, so you can stop hoping the past will change. Healing doesn't undo what happened, but it transforms who you are now. It gives you back your strength. Some people say, "I don't have time to heal. I have too much going on." But the truth is, if you don't take time to heal now, your unhealed self will demand it later. Through burnout, through broken relationships, through pain no one else can see. Healing isn't extra. It's essential. It's the base of everything real. When you decide to heal, you stop settling. You stop chasing people who can't see you. You stop shrinking to fit into spaces that don't honor you. And you start attracting different things. Not because the world changed, but because you did. You became someone who doesn't need chaos, who doesn't need attention to feel worthy, who doesn't need perfection to feel peace. And please remember, no matter what you've faced, no matter how many times life broke you, healing is still available to you. You're not too broken, not too far gone, not too late. You're still here, and that means you still have time to become everything you were meant to be. Everything starts on the inside. And the woman who chooses to heal, she becomes unstoppable. Perfection is a story we've been told, a mix of pressure and polished lies wrapped up in pretty expectations. Be better. Do more. Look perfect while you're doing it. But a woman who values herself doesn't chase perfection. She walks with purpose. And purpose. It isn't always tidy. It isn't always shiny, but it's always real. Eventually, you'll see that perfection is exhausting. You can't breathe in a life that's built to impress others.